Welcome one, welcome all, welcome to State of the Age with Mike and Austin. I am your host, Austin.
And I'm Mike, just to clarify.
Clarify. And happy to have y'all on board. So we are here with Michael Walsh. Michael, can you let the viewers know who you are, what you do?
Hey guys, I'm Michael, not to be confused with Mike, so I have to remember that during our call. And so I've been writing fantasy sci-fi books for about 5 years now. Just launched a new children's book, and I had the good pleasure of meeting Austin at a recent convention over in Savannah. And so I'm excited to join you guys and talk more about books and writing and probably nerdy stuff that's going to be awesome. So I'm very excited.
Could you give a couple brief plot synopses summing up some of your proudest works?
Sure. My very first book is called Trouble in the Floating City. It's the first in what I call the Zoboros Series. It follows a group of young, superpowered individuals. Nobody is allowed to use powers. If you use powers, you tend to disappear. People come after you for various reasons. And so they've kept their powers a secret for a long time. But when a villain comes to town, the main character must decide, do I step up and save the day? What are the consequences of that? And how many... who can I trust in this universe? Because everybody's got their own agenda when it comes to people with extraordinary powers, and so it becomes a lot of a bit of a mystery thriller wrapped in a big fantasy superhero epic. And we follow this character and some of the other superpowered people he meets over the course of several entries in the series. So that's been my pride and joy. And then on the other side, I just put out a children's book. It's called Gabatha the Green, but it just follows a green bean lives on a farm, wants to go out to the big city and make it as a fashion designer. And when she goes off, she learns that it's a lot tougher to make it the big leagues than she thought, and she has to tap into her roots to find her way to stand out from the crowd. And those are my most proud works that I've got so far, and I'm cooking up, of course, a few more superhero entries in my series right now.
Awesome.
I love that, honestly. What I appreciate is like you're so versatile with your work. Like you have your Zoboros series, and then you jump right into Gabatha the Green Bean. I love that transition. How did you how did that idea come up? Like just the Gabatha.
Yeah, I'll hold the cover here. Gabatha is kind of an interesting story. It was not something I ever intended to write. I never really thought about children's books. I definitely wanted to make my superhero books accessible to like young kids, teens, that sort of thing, but not a pure children's picture book. And I'm not an illustrative talent by any means. I did not do the illustrations. But that came up more as kind of an inside joke. My girlfriend, Gabby, said, because I was writing books, she's like, oh, what book character would I be? I think we were at like a Barnes and Noble, and we just started throwing ideas around, and her best friend calls her Gabatha, so I'm like, well, the character's got to be named Gabatha. And she tends to wear a green outfit a lot. So that became kind of an inside joke. We would like talk about, like, we'd be like, oh, it's Gabatha or something if we were in like a kids section of Barnes and Noble. But then one day, her birthday's coming up, and she goes, I'd really like to see Gabatha for my birthday. Like, could you like write it and stuff? And I was like, let me see what I could do. Because at that point I knew, I work at FSU, Florida State University, and we have a student in our program who she's super involved. So I would see her everywhere at our events and things. So I knew her fairly well. And I was aware that she had been doing some illustrative work for Dork Diaries, which is a little past my time. I didn't read it as a kid, but I heard it's a fairly popular like children's series, and she did some good work for it. So I was like, hey, Ariana, would you want to help me illustrate a bunch of talking vegetables? And she goes, I've never done veggies before. I'll give it a shot. And so I wrote up a little script, and it really just followed. I didn't know what to write for her at first, but I was like, what do I write for Gabby? And I realized I'll just write her story, which is she didn't come from a farm, but she came from a small town, Tallahassee, makes it in the fashion industry for a while. Eventually gets a little, I wouldn't say homesick. She was having a good time over there, but COVID hit, and so she ended up moving back home eventually, because why pay rent when you're working remotely? So she moves back to Tallahassee, and once she comes back here, she finds her groove. She's happy to be home with family, and so she kind of did this back and forth between New York and here, rather than just staying in New York, and so kind of tapped into her roots there. So I pulled that out and kind of wrapped in the story, and then found a really great illustrator, Ariana, who just rocked it with once I saw the first couple like black and white specs of like what she was doing, I'm like, this is gold, So obviously it was a big hit at the birthday. So excited. We're like, let's keep going, let's keep drawing, let's keep writing. And we filled in all the gaps of the story. And a couple months later, we were ready to launch.
Oh, that's amazing.
I love that. I love that entire thing.
I'm no stranger to an idea being an inside joke and then just beginning to have a passion for creating it. I think that is amazing. I think that is wonderful.
Oh, thank you guys.
When an idea starts like that, you know that when you create it, it's going to have your all put into it. Because when you do something just to be funny,
yeah, totally. It was this weird, like, lightning in a bottle feeling. And while I love all my other books, they're like, those are the ones that, like, when I write the superhero books, that's the book I would have wanted to read when I was 12 years old and never had. This other thing is just like, it was, it was part joke, but then part just like, it was about our relationship and about my girlfriend. And then, like, it just kind of, something about it just struck a chord when you got drilled down to the bare bones of, like, what her story is, which is, goes out to the big city and then reconnects with her roots. And I was like, I feel like that's something that other people could cling on to, and there's a very specific audience for like fantasy sci-fi versus I bring out this children's book, and if people like fantasy sci-fi, we'll chat each other up about those books. But when just any Joe sees Gabatha the Green Bean, they're like, what is this? And I wrap them up in the story, and the fun thing is, like, everybody's got a kid or somebody who might, they know somebody with a kid, someone who might enjoy this. So, it's been fun to kind of see those initial reactions. As someone told me, one kid was like, "Oh, green bean, that's my favorite veggie," and I was like, "Great kid, go nuts,"
I said this before, I'll say it again. That's amazing. That's wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Now, you mentioned COVID. Is that some kind of plot point in Gabatha?
It's not in Gabatha. I don't want to say go dark, but like I drilled it down to like the bare bones of her story. So it's like the true story is she was kind of forced. I don't want to say forced to come back, but it just didn't make any financial sense to like stay in the city or find a cheaper place near your parents, and so that's what she eventually opted to do. But for the sake of the story, the way the story goes is Gabatha goes out to the big city and just starts to get this kind of homesickness. She's so ready to leave the farm. She's so ready to be with, I guess, what she views as her people. She wants to be with all the other like up and coming fashion designers. She just dresses differently from everybody else on the farm. But when she gets there, she realizes like she doesn't stand out. Her job's in like the basement of the fashion studio. Her apartment isn't all that great. And she's just not really sure where to go. And she meets a wise old potato who kind of gives her the feedback of, hey, you should, you're not going to stand out in the city by being like everybody else. You have to like find what makes you unique. And so she thinks about it, and then she goes back to the farm and she comes up with this idea. So it was by tapping into her roots that she found that. And as a side note, the illustrator, as much fun as she had drawing veggies, she had even more fun drawing all the outfits. She was like, this is my element. And so all the vegetables are fun, but also the way they dress and everything, it really pops. The colors and the styles. It's like next to the story itself, my second favorite part is just seeing what they wear and what vegetables get to appear throughout the thing. I'm like, oh, how do you dress a tomato? And she gives them like a tilted hat or something. She really got creative with that part.
Amazing.
I'm a fan of the creative process right now.
Every meeting we had, we were just like, I was like, what if you gave the carrot this? And what if, we were like, what if we put a little cabbage in there? And it's like, she takes a cab and she's just riding with a bunch of cabbages in the wheelbarrow.
Cabbage in the cab. I love it. I'm a fan of wordplay. This is great.
Just the idea of that is so amazing. You have me speechless.
Oh, I'll give you one more, and it's kind of a subtle joke. Not everybody catches it, but in the book, when she meets the wise old potato, they meet at like a diner, And so the initial drawing was Ariana was like, "What do I draw? What would the potato be eating?" So it's a
French
potato.
fries,
It's in the
of course.
dirt. What's that?
French fries, of course.
Oh, you already know the joke. That's exactly what we gave him. At first, she gave him dirt.
That was a
She's like,
guess.
"Well,
That
he's
was
in
a
the
guess.
dirt." No, and you're right. But at first, it was dirt, and I was like, "That kind of looks like a turd. Like I don't know. That looks kind of gross." And we were like, "What could we draw?" And I was like, "You should make it like French fries or something savage like that." And so, it's like, I love that. Just that little joke that everybody catches in there.
I love that. I really like
It's a
that.
bit dark. It's a bit dark.
A little dark. It's one of those things the parents pick up on that hopefully the kids don't really recognize.
Bit of a cannibal there. So, 5 years ago, how did you know you wanted to be an author?
Ooh, so growing up, I wanted to be more of a director. I was like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. Those were like eventually Quentin Tarantino. As I got a little older, those were kind of my idols. But I always loved storytelling. A little different from the film school, but you learn a lot of the same skills. You do like the writing course, a lot of production, a lot of editing. There were a lot of up and coming editors in the program. So it was my first time being surrounded by other filmmakers and people who were really excited about this stuff. So I was just really jazzed in that program. We were having so much fun. And when we got to the writing course, I loved the script writing process. I loved like taking the stories and then trying to bring them to life on the screen. And I'm telling everybody at the end of the semester, like, "Oh, writing classes next semester. You guys ready?" And they're like, "Yeah, I guess." And I was so shocked that like they didn't like the writing part of it. They all love the editing, the production stuff. And it's like kind of like at the end, you're tired and it's just you in front of the screen, even though I guess that's what writing is too. But at least with writing, I'm like I can create and just come up with anything. It's in the editing room where you find out what your limitations are, what you can do. So I was really excited for the writing part. And I learned through that program that writing wasn't something that it wasn't a skill a lot of people in production have. And the one that I think they most need in order to stand out. So once I kind of found, everybody finds their niche in like film school and production school. I found my niche was really in the writing. And at the time I was developing what became my fantasy sci-fi series, but I was writing it as like TV scripts. I was like, maybe this could be a show with like an ensemble cast of characters. I learned how hard and how expensive it is to make some kind of fantasy series like that, like a Star Trek. I mean, because you have to build every set and every costume. You can't just film on the streets of New York or something. You have to go and build it all. So I was like, man, as a first timer, I probably wouldn't be able to sell this, or if I did, it'd probably be really changed. As I learned that industry, I learned how little power the writer has and how much power the studio has to go and change everything. So then I was like, you know what? Let me just try my hand at writing a book and see how that goes. Because at least I could say like, hey, I could reference this book and say, this is what I wanted to do. So I wrote and rewrote and eventually learned how to properly write a book. It probably took 6 or 7 drafts to get to something that I truly felt like was the book I intended to write. So that took a couple years. But it was in 2020 when everything kind of shut down. There was a lot more free time on my hands. I want to make this happen. And it was right at the end of 2020, like December 2020, I launched my first book. And I didn't know how people were going to react. I was like, oh, my friends just going to think I'm a nerd as usual. They're not going to care. But the moment I posted the book cover, because I had gone through the effort of getting a book cover made, and told everybody I was writing a book and going to launch it soon, that was to this day my most popular like Facebook post. And not to say I got like crazy sales or anything from it, but just the amount of energy I got from everybody else energized me, that people were being really positive and supportive, and really excited. And people I hadn't heard from in so long were reaching out from like high school or like college. Like, I want to write a book too. I had no idea how many other people like sit on like their ideas and want to write them into a book of some kind, whether it's a fantasy book, or I even had people reaching out like, I want to write a cookbook or a nonfiction, a historical epic, something like that. So that was really energizing. So I launched that in 2020, and ever since I've been on the bug. So I ended up really falling into the author path because I felt I had a lot of creative control, and also just a lot of fun helping people read and being part of that world.
That's great. I'm just saying, like, just this whole, like, the whole like process, like, you're incredibly passionate. about your projects. Like, you're going into detail about everything, and that's what I appreciate about you and all authors.
If I may cut you off, just here on the show, we are incredibly supportive of anyone who has that passion for their work. We love to criticize anyone who just likes to pump things out for the sake of pumping things out without having any real, for lack of a better term, passion for what they're doing. And prime examples being Warner Brothers Discovery or Disney. It's all a matter of making money, and we love to see that there are creators still out there who love what it is they're creating, and it just feels great to see.
That's you bring up a really great point, and I want to, especially coming from a production background where a lot of those bad decisions and bad scripts are coming out, and like it's sad because people like us who are really passionate about this stuff, they are in that industry. There are really good creators out there, but once I learned how that system worked, I was like, and how it drains you out, how it really takes advantage of the creators. It doesn't pay them well, that passion project, and it gets warped and twisted, and there's too many cooks in that kitchen, and you end up with a horrible Star Wars expanded universe that like is worse than the original expanded universe that was in book form, you know, that people really loved, that they retconned basically. So or really just pushed into a separate, they're like, this is the legends, and I'm like, no, that was the real thing, and then you guys made this slop, you know. And
yeah,
I know
more
with
and more revisions, it just it just turns into something that's not even close to the original source material.
And I'll say this too, because I feel like I get a lot of, I'm sure you guys get these too, a lot of questions about AI replacing writers or AI doing this or that. And my feeling is that while AI is going to get better at churning out stories, right now it can't do a long form to save its life. It doesn't have a life, but maybe it will one day. I don't know. Scary. Don't think it's ever going to have that passion that you're talking about, that sort of like that human spirit that a writer is going to naturally put into their work, you know. Even when I'm writing superheroes in space, you know, because they're like, write what you know, it's like that doesn't exist, but the relationships between the characters, some of the internal conflicts they're going to have, those are real things that real people can connect to. Everybody tells me when they read the first book, the main character, his best friend, his younger brother, the dynamic those three characters have, that like hooks them in right away. And I'm like, that was real life. That was me. My younger brother wanted to be cool, so he would go along with it, and then the main character, me, would get strung along and try to get them out of trouble, and that becomes Trouble in the Floating City.
I just love to see so much soul put into a work, no matter what it is. It could be a drawing, it can be a video game, it can be a book.
Totally.
This leads me into my next question. How important do you believe it is to have that kind of passion for your work?
I mean, and you guys probably know this. I know, Austin, you've published works and everything. It's not easy to get to finish a book. Everybody's got an idea for a book, but to actually go through all the process of like writing it out, it's a big challenge to like get to the end of a book and get it to where, like, revise it to the point where you're like, this is the book I intended, you know? So you have to pursue it has to be a story that really jazzes you. You know, sometimes I'll have different ideas that float around that I'm interested in writing, but I have to like let them incubate and kind of find the one that really comes to the top of my mind. Whenever I think of writing it, like eventually like one idea is going to kind of rise above the others, and I'm like, that's the one I need to follow, because that's the one that I'm going to see through. Because I've had plenty of projects, whether it be a script or a book idea, or maybe I wrote a few chapters or a few scenes or outlined some things, but I just couldn't get into it. Like, I couldn't get excited every day to come back to the page and do it. And that was my signal I needed to work. But then on top of that, because I think your question too is about like how it is for like the customer, the reader. Like, I think that passion is what I think people really truly crave. It's that human connection that you get when you read a book or watch a film, where you can tell there was a really clear vision. Like even when it's like a bad movie, but you could tell somebody cared really, really a lot about it, you could still find enjoyment in that and watch it from front to end. Even if like you're like that doesn't make sense, that's a terrible line and stuff. But I know Ed Wood really meant something with this. You know, he was having fun with it. You know, like AI is getting more popular as like these big studios and publishing houses all kind of conglomerate and churn out the same stuff. I'm noticing more and more when I'm out selling books, people really get excited when you tell them you're a self-published or indie author. Like the word indie they're like, take my money, you know. I don't even care, you know, because I don't even know if they'll get a chance to read it. Most books that get purchased don't actually get read, but they're just excited to support. And I think to them, it's this kind of rebellion, this like, yeah, stick it to Amazon, stick it to Warner Bros, stick it to like Disney and those big companies. Like I want to, they're usually at local bookstores and local farmers markets and things like that. So the more I've expanded out and found more places that storytelling, or at least the idea of that storytelling, even if they never pick up the book, they just know, hey, I paid my dues. I gave somebody a little bit of help to make this happen.
Exactly. I mean, people who consume, especially independent media, they crave that soul.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had a signing this past weekend in Panama City. There's a really cool bookstore out there called Bookish Boutique. And I noticed this really at play. Last time I did a signing there were lots of children. So I bring Gabatha along. Gabatha's just fresh out the oven. Like it was like we had just launched it the week before. And I'm expecting like lots of people to buy the children's book. But we get there and right away, as I'm setting up, a woman walks up with a Star Wars tattoo. And she is just like, what are these superhero Zoboros books? Because the covers, as you'll see kind of here, very, very like sci-fi inspired. So she just comes right over. She gravitates toward it. I'm still setting up, but I'll talk to like, I'm not going to stop you from buying now, you know? So she was so excited. I tell her it's Star Wars inspired. She's like, that's all I need to hear. She buys 2 sets of the books, one for each of her boys. And from there on out, everybody's coming up and buying the superhero books. We get a couple Gabatha sales, but it's really the superhero books. And I realized what was going on. That store is very there's a lot of indie bookstores are following this model right now of kind of appealing to the female readers. It's more focused on the romance than it is on the fantasy elements. I get excited about the fantasy elements. So what ends up happening is a lot of the customers there are women, and they're bringing their boyfriends, their husbands along, and the boyfriends and husbands don't really have anything to read at these kind of stores, you know, so they just end up sitting on the couch. That's what the person working there is telling me. She's like, yeah, usually those guys will sit on the couch, but because you're here, they're all running over and buying your books, you know. So it turned out to be, I usually don't sell that well at bookstores, but it turned out to be a really great day for us selling the Zoboros books. And I think it's because we filled a gap that I think people are feeling in different spaces, you know. I think we see it on like, you know, with like Disney's media and stuff like that to churn it out. I call it like I see a lot of bestsellers, I call them like the McDonald's of the burger industry, you know, of the book industry. So like in burgers, McDonald's is never anyone's favorite burger, but it's consistent. People know it. People like it enough. And so it sells really well. But I think people are looking more and more for that gourmet burger. And I don't want to say like, oh, my stuff's gourmet or anything. There's plenty. People can nitpick it to death, and they're not wrong. You know, there's technical things I could have fixed in my first book. But it was something unique, and I think something that scratched an itch for a lot of people. It certainly scratched an itch for me. I never felt like I had a superhero ensemble cast in space. That was something I really wanted to see. This kind of blend of those Marvel DC elements that people like mixed with the things that we really liked about Star Wars. And then throwing away some of the stuff I didn't like. Some of those tropes get a little tired. So I try to avoid the tired tropes, but find the tropes that I really enjoy. I love a cantina scene. I love, you know your cantina scene from Star Wars. There's all the aliens at like the bar. Love those. Had to have that in like one of the first chapters. I love teenage characters getting into trouble and then getting into too much trouble and realizing like, oh, the real world is calling, you know, and watching that progression of change with the characters. So those were all things I wanted to inject in this. And I've been really excited to see the kind of warm reception from people.
I could just tell your passion is 100% real. And that's what I appreciate about seeing all these artists, you know, just really, they're all real. and all that, they have real emotions. Like all their characters in their works or in their arts, it's all real. Again, not like the copy and paste like all these corporates are doing, like you've mentioned. Like then people find a way to connect with it, which is something that is hard to establish. But once you get it, it's so reassuring to just hold on to that, and you feel this gratification. That's the word, gratification of it. And that's what I'm getting from you, is that you've got lots of passion and realism that I'm like these books are just a fantastic read for anybody. Even if you're not a fan of sci-fi, I think people can still find something that like that passion you've got, they'll still find something in there to connect with.
I appreciate that so much, man.
What comes to mind? Snow White.
Oh, the recent movie.
Yeah, the recent movie. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw the tabloids. I didn't watch it, but I know what you're talking about.
Snow White and the 7 CGI abominations, right?
But then apparently they got the actual like actors like in a different. I don't know if you watched it, but like it was all sorts. It was just textbook like corporate mess. It was like we want to appease people, but then we just respond to the reaction, so then we change it, and then it just gets into this warped thing that doesn't resemble the original at all.
So that just makes it all the more reassuring to know that there are people out there who do care about injecting that soul into what they create.
Yeah.
And I gotta imagine, as someone who went to school for production yourself, that stuff like Snow White is that much more. It gives you that much more drive to create something good.
It really does. It not only gives me drive, but I feel like it gives readers a lot of drive too, or consumers of media a lot of drive. Because I think a lot of time, and you'll see it throughout history, whenever it's like something changes, there's like this equal opposite react. I think that in terms of like consuming media, we have all this conglomerization, all this spitting out of just, generic content that feels generic. And so the fear is that becomes the norm, which it kind of is, but that becomes like almost everything we have available to consume. And I think there's this reaction from people saying, a lot of them are like, no, I don't actually want that. And so they're going and they're finding indie and they're seeking out things that are unique. I think that pushback is going to have an impact. We see it there's a whole fiasco with Amazon audiobooks, and I'm not informed enough to like exactly explain what's going on, but what I'm seeing is that like BookTube has made this big reaction to how Amazon has stripped away some of the rights and royalties from audiobook publishers, or basically the authors who put out their audiobooks, and the pushback has been so extreme. Like I'm really curious to see if Amazon/Audible like rolls back some of the things it's trying to do. Like I think there's going to be a pushback to the point where players like Amazon, like Disney, like Warner Bros, who have all this power, are recognizing, hey, the consumers don't like this, we have to dial it back. It's great for us consumers and artists, because that means more artists get paid and more artists can get out there and more awesome, unique stories can be told and consumed. And I'm curious to see how that plays out, if it becomes this indie renaissance, or at the very least, if there's enough pushback on the big companies to where we as consumers can get better content than we've been getting lately.
I really hope that's the case.
Me too. I'll take either one, but preferably the one where it's an indie renaissance, because it's better for my pocket, it's better for your pocket, and it gives us more time.
Oh yeah,
because that means more books get to come out, and hopefully I can turn out more awesome stuff.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned full time, because I'm curious to know what the process of establishing yourself as a full-time author would look like. I mean, I'm not saying, not assuming you are full-time, but I'm curious to know at least what that process looks like, because you, of course, have more experience in that field than we do. So, if that's something you would know and care to share.
I know one thing for sure is that I don't know if there's one right path to it. The general feedback I've heard from writers who have gone full time has been wait until like you could actually pay all your bills with this before you jump the ship, which is hard because I think part of it too is time. I only have so much time to write, therefore I can only put out so much content. And a lot of times the name of the game is you need enough books on the shelf before like the magic number I heard was like 8 to 10 books. I look at the clock and I'm like, I'm in my 30s now. So I'm like, okay, how much can I realistically do this before like kids come along and other responsibilities and work is busier and things like that. So how can I make that work? So I don't know if there's one path for everybody, but I do think a good sort of in the middle is that if you can find a way to support yourself while still preserving your writing time, that's a big plus. And I think the other part too, and something I've had to kind of adopt this past year, like 2025, I said, okay, I finished 2024. At the end of 2024, I launched my third book. And I have Gabatha in the pipe, and I know most of that work is coming from the illustrator, like it's already written. So it's just, I didn't have to spend a lot of time on it at that point. So I was like, okay, I'll have 4 books in 2025. Let me focus most of my writing time on the marketing and promotion. I have enough books here where I think I can talk about your books and your passion, and going to some other places around town, trying to donate books to places where maybe the word can get out, and just trying to integrate as much marketing as possible. I do marketing professionally. I work at Florida State University in marketing, so I've learned a couple tricks of the trade, and one thing I like to do is make sure everything ties back in a loop. And what I mean by that is if you buy the book, you're going to get a QR on the back of the book that's going to take you to my author website. It's going to take you to my link tree that has all my social media. And so trying to integrate everybody and get them all connected so that if anybody stumbles on my book, whether they pick it up on a friend's bookshelf, they see it in the bookstore, they're all going to see that QR code and they can be fed back, follow me on social media, join my email list, something, so I can keep that sale going. I can keep customers engaged. They don't just see it and then forget about it later. They're going to see it and be reminded of it. So their friends get to see it. The more I can expand it out. So it's kind of the way a friend of mine described it to me, who was a lot smarter than me. He was like a PhD in engineering. He's like, here's the curve that you want to get on. It's not like your normal job where you ascend pretty linearly with your salary and your benefits and things like that. It's slow growth, and then something just explodes. And I haven't hit that explosion point yet, but I'm trying to lay the groundwork for when that will happen. So my advice to anybody who wants to do this is just patience and lay a good foundation. And that's going to take time and work, and sometimes time is really hard to come by, especially when you have a day job to support yourself, you have family obligations to your friends and to school. If you're in school right now, all those things, you have to make time for what's important to you. So as tired as I might be some days, I know I got to sit down and grind out something for my books. I know every day I need to block off an hour or two to make sure I'm either writing or doing something to support my writing. And so that's been my goal, and that means less time watching shows, less time at the gym, less time with friends, less time calling home. But I'm starting to see the benefits of it. Again, haven't hit that explosion. I'm hoping the explosion comes. I don't know if it ever will, but at the end of the day, at least I could say I spent 1 to 2 hours doing what I really love to do every day. And I learned this back in 2020. I'll save you the details, but the short version is I had a neighbor who was a published author, and I knew this because he had this big van and he had all his artwork painted on it. And so I knew he published fantasy books and he had his little Amazon QR code on there. So one day I happened to catch him taking out his trash, and I ambushed him at the dumpster and I was like, hi, I'm a aspiring author. I just finished my first book. I'm querying agents. He goes, oh, you're querying agents? Don't do that. So, and while I don't think that's the hard and fast rule, I think if people want to go the traditional route, they definitely should try it. And they might just get lucky with the agents and the publishers. I was young, I wasn't established yet, and he thought it was a good way for me to get my start and try to build a name for myself. That way I wasn't waiting on an agent to open the door for me. But he laid out the hard, fast stuff I needed. He's like, get a professional edit. And he's like, think of it like an insurance policy. Like when you get to the end of the book, just have somebody go over it professionally who can tell you how to make it better. And it's usually the most expensive part of the process. It's usually a little over $1,000 to do that. So it can be a little rough. What I did, thankfully it was during COVID, so all the money I would spend going out and doing things that was all just coming home. So, that's where the money went to. So that was the biggest one. But I would also say, but he recommended that, and every time I've done it, the editor has been super, super helpful. The other things I recommend, or the other things he recommended were, you have to get ISBN. That's just your book code, so that it gets registered, and you'll need that to process it through Amazon or Ingram Spark, wherever you publish it in. And then finally, a good cover art. And he's like, he didn't recommend doing it yourself. As I said, I'm a terrible illustrator artist. That's why I write. I'm like, I'll paint a word picture instead. So finding somebody, I used a program called 99 Designs, and I found somebody who's pretty good. That's by no means the only option. So anybody who wants to do it, I recommend shopping around, finding somebody at that right price point for you. Maybe there's somebody who can give you a sample, or they have samples. Once you have your cover, your ISBN, and a professional edit, like, you're good to go, as long as you've like administered the edits the editor recommends, for the most part. And I usually do like 99% of them. Like, it'll be a track changes in a Word doc situation. And if there's something I like don't agree with, I'll play with it a little bit. But 99% of the time, I'm like, man, that sentence is so much better that way. Oh, that makes sense, and I just check them off, check. But those are the three things you need. And then once you're all done with that, you format the book. And Amazon has templates based on the book size you want. So it's not the easiest process, but it's pretty streamlined. So it's not as intimidating as it sounds. Once I did it the first time, there was some banging my head on the desk to get everything evened out properly. But now that I know the rules of it, like the last couple books have been a lot easier. I have my templates. I can just plug them in. Takes hours, takes a few days, and you'll have all your pieces together and you can launch it. The hardest part is, of course, finishing the book. But once you're there, these steps, like, it's like go.
That is very good to know.
Yeah.
For any viewers who feel like they have something that they love to publish, just put their name out there. I mean, like you said, the professional edit is about $1,000. You said
it was at the time I started. At least the service I use has gone up. I imagine a lot of them have, with inflation / like, I call it stagflation, because it's like, it's not really inflating that much anymore. They just realized they could inflate the prices, so they did, because people would pay for it. So they've gotten more expensive. Like, now it was pushing closer to like the $2,000 mark. But that's just with the service I have been using. And I shopped around. I found kind of a middle of the road service. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive. Cover art, edit, and ISBN, which is about $100 for an ISBN. I would plan to set aside about $2,000 for your launch. Maybe more if you want to do all the marketing and things like that. I try to keep my marketing pretty organic, just because if you feed it to Amazon or Facebook for like ads and stuff, it can rack up real quick when you're out looking. I've tried it. I haven't gotten quite the return on sales that I've wanted from those. I haven't gotten the ROI. And I've been told that in order to really make that part work, you need to put a lot of money into it. But just to get the book published and out on Amazon or Ingram Spark or whatever, I'd say $1,500 to $2,000. You could probably do it. You could probably do it even less if you cut some corners and things like that.
So as far as, because you kind of answered this question when we were talking about Gabatha, as far as your sci-fi series, do you have any particular inspirations for what goes on in those like as far as the like X-Men kind of people with superpowers are really frowned upon? Did that aspect of it come off the top of your head? Was there some kind of particular inspiration for that kind of plot point?
It started as, of all things, even though I always tell people, because X-Men and Star Wars were big inspirations for me, and I love them. When I was in high school, he was in high school, and I was volunteering at the time, so I would like run the music for them and stuff. So I got to know the plot and the lyrics like front to back. And I had this idea where I was like, I love that idea of like these two rival gangs, Jets and Sharks, like fighting each other in the city streets. And I'm like, what if the city floated? And what if there were gaps in between and people could fall? And there were all these like, I just had this whole field day with like the idea, and that's where it all started. And then I was like, what if one person in one of the gangs had superpowers, but he couldn't use them? And he's like, his friend's getting like punched on or something. He's got to go save them, and he like lets it release. And that became I was like, that's the story, and I started tooling with that. But I'd say more like introspectively, Incredibles, which is a movie all about superheroes that people reject them, and so they have to they go into hiding. The whole plot's very similar. But I think what resonated with me, and I didn't know it when I was first setting out. It wasn't until very late in the process that I realized what I was writing. I was writing at a time where I had started my first full-time job. I had a passion for writing, a passion for filmmaking, and the job had nothing to do with that. And worse, it was a very, very bleak, beige, 8 to 5 desk job. And in a place where especially some of the management there was very much like, just stay in your lane. Anytime I'd have an idea, oh, you don't need to do that. Oh, don't waste your time. It just felt very office politics. I was like, is this what my whole life is going to be? Is this kind of boring, nitpicky, office politics thing? I have big ideas and big vision for things. And so my escape was to write at the end of the day, to work on that book that I had started toward the end of college. And it was late in the process when I kind of realized the whole story of our main character, Kano, of having these powers and being afraid to use them, of thinking that it's not good. That was me thinking about my writing. That was me saying, oh, I want to be a writer, but that's not a real profession. Everybody at work says that's just a hobby. So I'm just going to keep this down and not share it with the world. And to have shared it, just like the character shares his powers with the world, regardless of the reactions, which were in the story very mixed, it causes a lot of problems for him, but he also finds himself on the path of who he will become. And so by releasing my writing to the world, that was my first step to this. And the way I'm talking to you guys and getting passionate about it, I was not like that 5 or 6 years ago. I was very timid about it as an author, even before you publish. As long as you're you're writing something, you're a writer, and I think if anybody can walk away, if they're an aspiring writer from this conversation with one thing, I hope it's that you are a writer if you're trying, and hopefully they feel encouraged to keep trying, because I think there's a lot of awesome stories that don't get told just because people are afraid to share them.
I don't know what I was expecting. I was not expecting West Side Story.
1-2 punch right there.
Yeah.
Nobody ever does. It's that one, it takes some explaining. So I never tell people that right at the desk, because they'll never, unless they're a real theater nerd, they wouldn't even that's just such a left field option.
You said Star Wars. You said what? Star Trek, I think.
A little bit of Star Trek for sure.
I don't know. I just was not expecting West Side Story.
It doesn't come through the narrative, but when you read, and the initial draft is that really was inspired by it, was very, and went through so many changes, but particularly if you read the first book, chapter 2 and 3, when there's this chase between the main characters and the group of kids, that's my Jets and Sharks moment. After that, it kind of peters out, but that was, the original drafts were very much, you kind of got a Jets and Sharks vibe. That got dulled down later and was refocused on the superheroes and a bit of the mystery thriller elements that I played with later.
Yeah, I mean, inspiration could come from anywhere, really.
The best thing you can do is read a lot and write a lot. That's the only way you get into this. And I attribute reading also to watching really good television series and films and things like that, and seeing those different forms of writing and seeing those different storytelling forms, because there's so many connections and so many similarities between them. The mediums might be different, but you can get I just love, I saw Fantastic Four 2 weeks ago, and I just left the theater I'm so ready to write right now. That was awesome. That's exactly that scratched the itch. I got to go write something.
As someone who draws as a hobby, I know that exact feeling.
I wish I could draw like you could draw. All these ideas I have in my head, I ascribe to words, but I have these pictures in my mind, and I'm I can't draw it out. So the only option is to write it and then hope somebody can render it and someday. When I see the cover artist put out these things, I'm that's the riff. That's what I was that's even better than I imagined, because that's what great illustrators can do.
I mean, if you could paint a picture with words, that's a talent in itself.
Come up with a loose story and film it and see what happens, but this is definitely something I would not have thought of myself as a writer a couple years ago. It's been definitely a mode of practice, to get to a point where I'm okay, I can think up a scene, I feel fairly confident I can get the words down. If not on the first draft, eventually I will find the words. Once
it hits professional editing, right?
Yes, that too. that too. And he reveals to me all the things where I'm like, oh, that's the perfect word. Why didn't I think of that word earlier? You know?
So Michael, where can the viewers find your work?
They can find it on Amazon. My Zoboros series is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and I have a lot of local bookstores in the town. I'm from the Tallahassee area, so a lot of Tallahassee bookstores carry it, and I'm trying to expand it out to more places. But the best place is probably online, Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Gabatha the Green Bean, we just launched. Right now, it's only in paperback, whereas the other books have ebook versions currently, but it is something that's in the works. I've got a voice actor who I know who's been slowly building out those chapters. So hopefully audiobook is coming soon, but you can find ebook and paperback for the Zoboros series on Amazon, and you can find me, Michael Ciccarelli-Walsh. My website's ciccarelli-walsh.com. Hopefully it'll be posted somewhere on the video because I know Ciccarelli is a little hard to spell. But you can find all of that there.
Thank you all for watching.
Thank you so much.
Stay hydrated.
That's right.
Thank you guys for having me.